Welcome to the 700 Club. Are your tax dollars going to people who don't exist? A new report says that's exactly what's happening in Afghanistan.
The United States pays the salaries of tens of thousands of soldiers and security forces who may not be real people. As Eric Rosales reports, they're being called ghost soldiers.
America's longest war is now into its 16th year. With no end in sight, President Trump is considering sending more U.S. troops to Afghanistan. More feet on the ground, however, may not be the answer, according to the man overseeing Afghanistan's reconstruction. Corruption is hampering the country's development. Case in point, reports that the U.S. government is paying the salaries of tens of thousands of Afghan soldiers that don't even exist.
When we identified it and said this was a problem, there was some pushback. There was pushback from the Pentagon. There was pushback from some members of the Hill. There was pushback from some of the bureaucrats, these nameless, faceless bureaucrats that you see in the government saying, oh, no, we're exaggerating.
Special Inspector General John Sopko says he was first warned about ghost soldiers from Ashraf Ghani before he was president of Afghanistan. Sopko says ghost soldiers were uncovered throughout the Afghan government.
We found it in the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Public Health, the Ministry of Public Works, and in the military and the police, that there are non-existent individuals getting salaries paid for by you, the U.S. taxpayer, as well as our allies.
It's still happening now?
It's still happening now.
To date, more than 120 billion American tax dollars have been spent in Afghanistan, and another 7.5 billion has been appropriated but not yet spent.
All we're going to do is continue to spend money we don't have.
North Carolina Congressman Walter Jones wants to stop the waste by ending the war. Jones and Congressman John Garamendi introduced a bill which would stop all funding for the war 1 year after it's signed.
This is definitely what war is all about.
Since the war began, a growing number of faces line his hallway. Pictures of those from his district killed in the war. So far, 560. Jones says all he wants is a debate about funding the war, something that hasn't happened since 2011. Jones says House Speaker Paul Ryan will not make that happen.
It's time that the American people put pressure on the Congress because of the cost both to life and to the taxpayer.
I contacted Speaker Ryan's office. His staff said no comment and referred me to the Foreign Affairs Committee, who is currently looking over the bill. As for the corruption, Sopko says a Justice Center operation has indicted several Afghan soldiers, including a general who took a $150,000 bribe and got a 15-year sentence.
They're starting to do this, but they need help. They need mentors. And the other threat is two very brave Afghan investigators were just gunned down on the street by a hit team came. So that means they're getting close to some big mafiosi.
Bottom line, Sopko says the United States dumped too much money too fast into too small of an economy with too little oversight. Eric Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
That's something we suspected for a long time, but here we have actual proof. And where's the oversight? Where's the oversight both in Iraq and Afghanistan? The problem, though, is that if we pull out, what happens? And I think you'd see yet another terror group take control of Afghanistan and start training terror teams. The last time they did it, it wasn't very pretty for us, and we shouldn't once again withdraw, because in that vacuum, what's going to take power? And it's the ones who are already organized. So the terrorists are already organized, and what can we do? We seem to be stuck, and it goes back to Colin Powell. Powell, if you break it, then you own it. Well, the terror threat level remains elevated in France after another attack. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. An Islamic terrorist set off a fiery blast in Paris when he drove a car packed with explosives into police. It happened on the famous Champs-Élysées Avenue, a popular tourist destination. No officers were hurt, but the armed driver was killed and 4 of his family members are now in custody. Meanwhile, in Britain, a man who tried to run over a group of Muslims at a mosque has been charged with terrorism. Police describe the attacker as a Brit from Wales named Darren Osborne. Witnesses say he claimed that he wanted to kill all Muslims. Well, American college student Otto Warmbier has died after suffering severe brain damage at the hands of the North Korean regime. What happened and how should the U.S. respond? Dale Hurd has the story.
North Korea said Warmbier fell into a coma after contracting botulism and taking a sleeping pill. Doctors in Cincinnati said they found no sign of that, nor any evidence of beatings. But an MRI showed Warmbier was missing an extensive amount of brain tissue. Someone or something inflicted enough damage to leave the 22-year-old University of Virginia student in a vegetative state.
His neurological condition can be best described as a state of unresponsive wakefulness.
Experts have been left guessing how or why this happened. North Korea had sentenced Warmbier to 15 years of hard labor for allegedly trying to steal a propaganda banner. After Warmbier's death, President Trump issued a statement blasting the brutality of the North Korean regime. The question now is how the U.S. should respond to a rogue state that holds 3 other Americans hostage and continues to perfect both nuclear weapons and long-range missiles. Warmbier's father, Fred, said his son was a thrill-seeker who wanted to see North Korea. With his death, the family said Otto has completed his journey home. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Gordon, just days ago, his parents were saying they were thrilled to have him back, and now this tragic turn.
It is a tragedy, and the blame lies at the feet of the North Koreans. And this isn't some isolated thing. There have been kidnapping Japanese citizens for decades. Recent assassination of a relative of the leader of North Korea in Malaysia. They're a rogue state, and they sponsor terrorism. The horror here is they're getting access to ballistic missile technology. And if they ever put a nuke on one of those, they could hold the whole region hostage. So it's time for the world community to absolutely clamp down, and it's time for China to step up and say that they're no longer supporting that regime.